Hello, this is Dr. Fonda Goldman. Today I was going to talk to you about Marma Therapy and specifically the Ayurvedic energy points on the nose. Oh, and before I get too far along here, I just wanted to thank everybody for all their support. I appreciate all the likes, the comments, the kind words, the donations. I really appreciate the support and knowing that this channel is creating value for you and the world. So thank you for that. As always, a note of caution, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical advice. For any symptoms that are severe or worsening, please contact a qualified healthcare professional. And it's always best to determine the root cause of any disease and to develop a comprehensive treatment plan, of which Marma Therapy can be a part. It may not always be appropriate, it may not always be sufficient, but it's another modality to consider when looking for treatment. So a couple words about Marma Therapy in general. It's from Ayurveda, which is traditional Indian medicine. It's more than 5,000 years old. It's a type of energy therapy. So these are energy points on the body, and there are 107 of them. And so in this paradigm of medicine, people, disease, health are all seen as different kinds of energies or waves. And so with that in mind, you kind of have to wrap your mind around the idea that, again, all of these things are energies. These points are energies. They're not necessarily sort of mechanical buttons. If you push harder, you'll get a better result, that sort of thing. They're actually very delicate and very sensitive. There's not a lot of need for manipulation, especially for these small, delicate points on the face. So if you come from a different background, maybe a massage background or chiropractic or physical therapy, something like that, I would advise you to really try to come from this place of energy rather than sort of trying to mechanically influence the tissues. What's nice about Marma Therapy that I appreciate is that it's non-invasive, so no needles are used. You just use touch. And if you want a little more history on Marma Therapy, I would check out my first Marma video, which is Marma Points on the Hand. In the beginning of that video, I have a little bit more about the history of it. And if you want an example of how to work with these points, I would look at my video, Marma Points on the Hand. It's a follow-along video, so I would check that out. Also, traditionally, Marma Therapy is used with different oils, and so I made a whole video just on natural oils that you can use for skin and body care. So if you're interested in adding oils into the mix here, I would look at that. And in general, if you're interested in this kind of content, I would look at my Marma Therapy, my Ayurveda, and or my body care playlists. I'm pretty good at organizing my videos into the playlist, so they're easy to find. So with that being said, let's get started on the nose points. So the first point here is called Nasa Mula. Nasa means nose, Mula means root, so root of the nose. And so the location of this point is right at the midline between the eyebrows. There's one of them. And the energies that this point balances or works with are the Pranavayu, the Apanavayu, the Sadhaka Pitta, and Tarpika Kapha. So these terms may not mean much to you. If you're a deeper student of Ayurveda, they'll be helpful and handy. Just to give you one idea, Sadhaka Pitta, for example, is Pitta is a fiery energy, and Sadhaka Pitta is the fiery energy of the mind. So it's how the mind processes information that it takes in, sensory information that it takes in, and makes sense of it and makes decisions from it. So that's just one example. I'm probably going to do some videos on these energies, or they're called subdoshas. But in any case, when you're starting out, I wouldn't worry about this too much, but again, as you get further along, they'll probably be more helpful. So with this point, indications for this point It generally regulates prana. Prana is, in Chinese medicine, it's sort of equivalent to the term or concept of qi. So it's sort of breathing and life force energy. Because again, we're talking about the nose here. So all of these points, as I've mentioned in my previous videos, all of these points, Marma points, they generally have local effects. So if there's an issue with the nose or sinuses, you probably want to look at the nose points first. So local effects here, the Nasamula point is good for headaches, specifically frontal headaches in the forehead and also migraines. It can be helpful with eyes, since it is close to the eyes, and specifically glaucoma, pressure that builds up there from fluids. And of course it helps with nose and sinus, so things like dry nose, runny nose, congestion, rhinitis, difficulty breathing through the nose, not from the lungs necessarily, but through the nose, and snoring. As long as the snoring is related to issues with the nose, you can have snoring due to issues in the throat or the lungs. So not that kind of snoring, but snoring that's due to blockage in the nose, resonance in the nose. It's also good for calming the mind, emotions, helps with insomnia and stress. So this point is particularly good for Vata, Pitta type of emotions, or wind and fire type of emotions. And if you're interested in knowing more about Ayurvedic psychology, I actually made a video, so you can check that out. So if I say Vata emotions or Pitta emotions or Kapha emotions, you'll know what those mean. This point is also good for the lower body. So if you're male, the prostate, and if you're female, the cervix. This point also is similar in its effects to the Ajna point. The Ajna point is 1 finger width above the eyebrows, and if you're interested in more about that, that point and forehead points is in my Marma points for the forehead, so you can check that video out. And this is also the meeting point of the Ida and Pingala. So if you're a student of yoga or Ayurveda, again, in this system, in this paradigm of medicine, there's a large energy channel that goes straight up the spine. That's called the Sushumna. And then there's 2 energy channels that wrap around each other, sort of like snakes, but when they kind of cross, that's the chakra point. And so this point is a meeting point of the Ida and the Pingala, so the 2 energy channels that wrap around the straight energy channel, or the Sushumna. So because of that, working with this point can affect energetic and subtle bodies as well as physical body. The second point here is called Nasa Madhya, and Nasa again is nose. Madhya, if you watch my eye video, I covered this term. Madhya means middle, so this is the middle nose point, and the location is the junction of the cartilage and the nasal bone. The energies that it invokes or balances are the Pranavayu, the Apanavayu, the Sadhaka Pitta, and the Tarpaka Kapha. So the way to find this point is if you take your fingers and kind of pinch a little bit at the previous point, Nasamula, and you start to slide down your nose. Pretty quickly you'll come to this point where there's like, you kind of drop off like the ridge of your cranium, your nasal bone, and it kind of drops off, and basically you're just sort of catching the cartilage there. So as you kind of see from the picture, I start it in between the eyebrows, I kind of pinch a little bit, slide down, and once I reach that ridge, that's actually the level of this point, the Nasa Madhya. So then you can just go back to the midline and work on this point. So the indications here are for the nose, so congestion, allergies, nosebleeds, difficulty breathing, and again snoring if it's a result of something going on in the nose. And this is also good for calming emotions, but mostly Pitta emotions, so mostly fiery emotions such as anger, irritation, aggressiveness, and overcompetitiveness. So that's point number 2. Point number 3 is Nasa Agra. And again, if you watch my eye video, you know that Agra means sort of the outer portion. So like there are a bunch of outer eye points. Here, this is the outer nose point. And this is on the tip of the nose, so again, in the midline. And the energies this point works on are the Pranavayu, the Vyana Vayu, the Apana Vayu, and the Avalambaka Kapha. So indications for this point are the nose and sinus again, irritation, rhinitis, sinusitis, nosebleeds, and anosmia. So, and anosmia is actually loss of a sense of smell. So working on this point either through touching the point or meditating on the tip of the nose can actually be helpful with developing the sense of smell if you've lost it. I'm curious, I didn't have many COVID patients with this symptom of loss of smell. It would have been interesting though they had other sorts of symptoms, but they didn't really have that, so it would have been interesting to work with this point if I had patients like that. This helps with the lungs, so it does get into the lower respiratory system a little bit, asthma and bronchitis. This point is also good for fainting if somebody passes out. And it's also good for the lower body, so again, prostate in men, cervix in women, and it can also help with hemorrhoids. And so actually you can use the tip of the nose as not just a therapy point, but a diagnostic point. So for people who have a groove in their nose right at the tip there, some people do, this can actually be an indication that there's issues with the prostate, the cervix, and or hemorrhoids. So you can use Marma points for both therapy and sometimes diagnostics as well. So again, these three first points that I talked about are right on the midline of the nose, and in a way, it's they actually form a microcosm of their own. So this first point, Nasamula, it actually corresponds with the Ajna or throat chakra. The second point, Nasamadhya, it corresponds with the Manipura chakra or solar plexus chakra. And this last point here, Nasa Agra, it corresponds with the Muladhara root chakra point. So actually by working with these 3 points, you're also working with these 3 chakras. So again, there's all these sort of levels of complexity and subtlety when you're working with Marma and Ayurveda in general, I've found. So the next point is called Nasaputa, or the nose petal or nose door. And this is actually on the groove right above or right on like the nostril, and there's a pair of them, so there's one on each side. And the energies balanced by this point are the Pranavayu and the Apanavayu. The indications are for nose and sinus, allergies, rhinitis, nosebleed, sinusitis, anosmia again. The lungs, so asthma, congestion, shortness of breath, emphysema, pulmonary immunity can be helped here. So if you generally have weak lungs, this would be a great point to work with. It also is helpful for the ovaries and fallopian tubes. And traditionally in India, for example, women would pierce this point to help with their, female gonadal function. And so getting a nose ring here can actually stimulate these organs. So because you're dealing with, the nostrils here, I wouldn't suggest pressing them at both, at the same time, because then somebody's going to have to breathe out of their mouth. But what you can do is actually do alternate nostril breathing. So what you can do is close the right nostril on the right side, and then you're going to breathe in on the left. If you want to add a little hold here, you can. And then you're going to close the left nostril and breathe out the right. And then you're going to breathe back in the right nostril, and you can hold a little bit. And then close the right nostril and breathe out the left. So you go in left, hold, out right, hold. Breathe in right, hold, breathe out left, hold. So you can do a few rounds of that for about 30. Again, most of these points you're going to be working with for about 30 to 60 seconds. So you can get some of your, breathing pranayama in besides the Marma stimulation. That's how you can work with this point. So the next point is called Urdhva Gandha. Gandha means maxilla, so the upper teeth, and Urdhva means upper. So the location here is, if you find the Nasamadhya point again, so right at the bridge of the junction of the nasal bone and the cartilage, and you just move down the nose to the side, exactly lateral, then you'll get to the Urdhva Gandha points, and there's a pair of them. There's one on each side of the nose. The energies that these points work with are the Pranavayu, the Apanavayu, the Tarpaka Kapha and the Avalambaka Kapha. And again, this point is also important for regulating prana or breathing or life force. These points can help with headaches, specifically sinus headaches, nose and sinus issues like postnasal drip, runny nose, asthma, nosebleeds, congestion, and also the lungs, so asthma, respiratory stress, bronchodilation, asthma. Well, I've written asthma 3 times. I need to clean that up. And then also the upper and middle lungs, so we're getting into a little bit more of the lower lung function. And these points can also be helpful with emotion, so specifically grief and sadness, which is a kapha or earthy type of emotion. And these points, the Urdhva Gandha points, can also be helpful with the colon. So that's point number 5. The next point is Adha Gandha, which means middle maxilla. And the location here is the midpoint between the Nasa Madhya point and the Nasa Agra point, but just lateral to the nose. So again, you have a pier on each side. It's kind of like above, the kind of divot there, sort of like in the little natural corner pocket there. You want to be careful, though, that you don't press so hard that you actually close off, your ability to breathe here. The indications for this point, again, regulating prana, breathing life force, sinus headaches, nose and sinus issues, congestion, pain, runny nose, nosebleeds, again, snoring if it's a result of something going on in the nose. This point is a little bit different from the other nose points in that it's helpful with the mouth, so congestion of tissue like swollen gums, the oral mucosa, maybe there's some ulceration or something on canker sores, that sort of thing going on, and also toothaches can be helped with this point. Again, consider that too. I mean, if you have a deep infection and, a rotting tooth root, you need to take care of that, appropriately. Marma Therapy is not going to take care of an infected tooth root, but, again, if there's some minor teeth issues, it can help there, or at least be part of the therapy. It won't be, entirely appropriate to be used on its own. So lung issues can be helped with this point, so bronchodilation again, shortness of breath, respiratory stress, congestion. It can also be helpful with emotions, specifically kapha or earthy types of emotions like grief and sadness or depression. These points are also helpful with the pancreas, and there's also a relationship with the colon. So again, some of these lower nose points are helpful with lower body issues. And then the last point here is called Kapala Nasa, or cheek nose, literally translated. It's also a pair of points, and it's just lateral to the nostrils. The energies at this point, these points balance, are Pranavayu, Tarpaka Kapha, and Avalambaka Kapha. Again, indicated for regulating prana, breathing life force, nose and sinus issues such as congestion, nosebleeds, anosmia, and allergies. These points are also helpful with facial nerves. A lot of facial nerves kind of run through this area, so it can be helpful with things like Bell's palsy and paralysis, facial paralysis, like maybe from a stroke. These points are also helpful with the lungs, so respiratory stress, functional capacity of the lungs generally, congestion, asthma, shortness of breath, and emphysema, so, COPD type stuff. And again, these points are good for calming the mind and emotions, and specifically grief and sadness, or kapha, earthy type emotions again. So this slide is just integrating the points and the general indications. So for headaches, points 1, 5, and 6 are helpful. For fainting, point 3, tip of the nose, was kind of a unique function there. The eyes is nasamula, so in between the eyebrow, so the closest one to the eyes can be helpful with things like glaucoma. All of them, again, all Marma points have local functions, so they're all good for nose and sinus issues. Point number 6 is helpful with mouth issues. Point number 7 is good for facial nerve issues. So the lower nose points, points 3 through 7, are helpful with the lower, respiratory system, or the lungs. Point number 6 is unique to help the pancreas. Point number 4, right, that piercing point on the nose, that's good for ovaries. Points 1 and 3 are helpful with the prostate and or cervix. well, it would be or, right? It would be or prostate or cervix, depending on what anatomy you have. And the colon is helped with points 3, 5, and 6. And mind, emotion, stress can be helped with most of them, 1 and 2, and then 5, 6, and 7. All right, so we have the 3 points down the middle, down the midline of the nose. We have 1, right above the nostril, and then we have 3 lateral to the nose. So those are your nose points. All right, so there you have it. 7 more points to add to your collection and repertoire of Marma points to work with. I very much appreciate your time, and I hope you found this helpful. So take care, and until the next one, take care.